Thick black smoke fills the air over Gaza tonight following a further day of intense Israeli airstrikes. The Palestinian militant group Hamas has responded with barrages of rockets into southern Israel. The number of dead on both sides continues to rise with little prospect of a swift end to the violence. Well, this was the scene in Gaza today. UN aid agencies have warned of the severe consequences of Israel's siege on the territory. Palestinian officials say more than 800 people have been killed by the strikes. The World Health Organization has called for a humanitarian corridor to be opened into the area. The families of more than 100 Israelis taken hostage have been speaking about their agony. The Israeli army says it's contacted the families of 50 soldiers seized by Hamas. At least 123 Israeli soldiers have been killed since Saturday. At least 1,000 Israelis are now known to have been killed in the Hamas attacks. Earlier today, Israelis were sent fleeing again in the town of Ashkelon after Hamas fired more missiles.
The first few days of war at this small Israeli community called Kfar Aza are a microcosm of Israel's trauma and a glimpse of what might come next. Israeli troops only seized back full control of the kibbutz this morning. It's one of a series of small Israeli villages along the Gaza wire.
Palestinian health officials say the number of people killed by rocket attacks in Gaza has risen now to 900. While the United Nations has told Israel that its siege of the territory is illegal, with food, water and power all cut off.
It seems like the Israelis are trying to decide whether or not they're going to launch a full-scale ground invasion of Gaza. And with that comes its own set of complications. This is a densely populated area. We know that there is a subterranean network of tunnels. And moreover, unlike previous conflicts, this one is further complicated by the presence of large numbers of hostages. So if the Israelis are going to invade and potentially occupy, the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, certainly have their hands full.
The Israeli armed forces have close to 170,000 people, including around 126,000 in the land army, 400,000 reservists also on call. That's as opposed to Hamas, that has around 20,000 in the Al-Qassam brigades.
No.
Israeli combat soldiers only started their fight back here at around 6 o'clock on Saturday evening, around 12 hours after Hamas attacked. These men are experienced soldiers, combat reservists. They said fighting their way back in against a determined enemy was hard going. Kfar Aza was taken by surprise, like everywhere else Hamas attacked. The kibbutz guard, armed civilian volunteers, died fighting back. stormed in, burning homes and killing families, according to the soldiers here. As it took so long to secure the kibbutz, the army couldn't recover all the civilian dead until this morning. These were the bodies of Israelis. Decomposing Hamas gunmen are still lying where they were killed. The murder of Israeli civilians here was without doubt a war crime. But what about the Palestinian civilians Israel is killing in attacks on Hamas? As you know, all armies have obligations under the laws of war to protect civilian life, even in war zones. Are you doing this with this level of airstrikes that are going on at the moment, and any ground operation that might happen?
I'm sure that we fight for our value and our culture all our life. And you fought with value and you keep your value in the same time. And I know that we will be very aggressive and very strong, but we keep our moral and our value. We are Israeli, we are Jewish, and war is a very difficult theater, a lot of problem. People that stay in the battlefield are suffer a lot. You can see what happening here. But we come to kill an enemy, not a civilian in their bed.
But in only a few days, Israel has inflicted immense damage in Gaza. They've cut off supplies of food, water, and power and killed hundreds of civilians. Palestinian suffering, Israel says, is the responsibility of Hamas. Israel's already been accused of breaking the laws of war, and that will get louder as more Palestinian civilians are wounded and killed. At Kfar Aza, Israeli troops were thinking of what's next, perhaps a ground invasion of Gaza. It was tough enough for the Israelis to come in to recapture this area, these small border communities. It is a different order of military challenge to cross the wire, to get into Gaza, potentially to fight house to house at a time when Hamas will have made its plans and will be waiting. Some of these men are moving north in case war starts with Hezbollah, the powerful Lebanese militia backed by Iran. What happened here is why Israel is shaken to its core, why it insists it must break Hamas, and it points to the danger and uncertainty ahead.
The question really is, can Israel actually defeat Hamas? Can it eliminate it to the point that it is no longer a major political or military challenge? And I think there are real questions. Short term, Israel has the might, the will to impose severe damage to whether it's command posts, Hamas arsenal, its leadership, its infrastructure. But what happens then? Who rules Hamas? I mean, who rules Gaza? How do you make sure that Gaza is not a threat to Israel down the road, whether it's from Hamas or others? And of course, the bigger picture is, as the ground assault begins, what might other parties in the Middle East do? The United States is scrambling right now to help Israel with military equipment and to deploy its own forces around the region, not in Israel, but as a sign, as warning to other parties not to get involved. But the real danger is the threat from particularly Hamas on Israel's northern border. Does it at some point
engage, not because it wanted to at the beginning, but because it now feels that it's obliged to help another proxy ally under the Iranian so-called axis of resistance. So there are a lot of questions down the road. We all know what's going to happen next. We all know that Israel can probably prevail, but the bigger issues are what happens kind of long-term in strategy, and how do you counter the potential for other threats and a wider conflagration.
Well, it's David and Goliath. It's really a kind of asymmetric conflict. However, with the help of Iran and with the help of allies like Hezbollah, Hamas has prepared to fight an asymmetric conflict to win the battle of quote-unquote hearts and minds in international opinion. And really, they're fighting on their home turf. Again, I just mentioned subterranean network of tunnels. They're going to go to ground. They're going to wage guerrilla tactics, and they're likely going to attempt to continue to penetrate Israel, shooting rockets. What we saw over the weekend was really a combined arms maneuver that we haven't seen from Hamas in previous conflicts. Now think about it. Operation Cast Lead 2008-2009, Pillar of Defense 2012, Protective Edge 2014. The Israelis have attempted to wipe out Hamas numerous times. They've been unable to do it, and I don't see anything that proves to me now that they're going to be able to follow through and finish the job this time.
Yes.
I covered the 1973 war a half century ago, and that was a far easier kind of equation. This was state versus state, that Israel knew the address of its enemy. It knew what the diplomatic options were. It knew what the military options were as army to army. Ever since the 1973 war, Israel's main rivals have been non-state actors. They've been militias. And as Israel discovered in Lebanon during the war with Hezbollah, it's very hard to beat a militia. And the United States learned that lesson in Afghanistan against the Taliban and in Iraq against ISIS. Israel in 2000 ended up withdrawing unilaterally from Lebanon because it knew it couldn't defeat, in the conventional sense, a militia. And that's the challenge that Israel faces today, even though it is far better armed, far better trained, far better equipped in confronting a much smaller and in some ways ragtag militia.
White House, US President Joe Biden has warned Israel not to go ahead with a military offensive in the densely populated Gaza border town of Rafah, this is to the south of Gaza, without a plan to protect civilians. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dismissed concerns from allies. about his plans to send troops into the last remaining designated safe zone in Gaza.
Soldiers from Israel's Givati Brigade on the ground in Khan Yunis. Close quarters combat, delicate and dangerous. The IDF says it's going well, but it's not done yet. 100 Hamas militants killed in recent weeks here, as many as 2,500, the IDF says, since the war began. This as Hamas claims that Israeli strikes over the last 4 days have resulted in the deaths of 2 more hostages, with 8 more injured. But Israel has made its course abundantly clear that the only way to bring the hostages home is to keep up the military pressure. Now the focus turns to Rafah. The 4 Hamas battalions hold up beneath, and half of Gaza's population crammed into this small patch of land right up against the border with Egypt. Israel is facing considerable international pressure to keep civilians safe as it prepares to launch its Rafah operation. But Israel's Prime Minister says evacuation back to the north is possible.
The areas that we've cleared north of Rafah, plenty of areas there, but we're working out a detailed plan to do so. And that's what we've done up to now. We're not cavalier about this. This is part of our war effort to get civilians out of harm's way. It's part of Hamas's effort to keep them in harm's way.
As for the Rafah crossing, Egypt has made clear that it is one way only. Yes to humanitarian aid going in, a firm no to Gaza's civilian population coming out. Are Egypt's concerns partly that bringing a large number of Palestinian refugees into Sinai might bring the war onto Egyptian territory, and it would be forced to respond?
Yes, this is what is perceived by the people. If you go out throughout the social media and the opinion pages in Egyptian newspapers, you will see this perception. But the main principle of no liquidation of the Palestinian cause or no evacuation of Palestinians from their land is the main prevailing language in Egypt.
With the focus of the fighting now in Gaza's south, there is some calm in the bombed-out thoroughfares of Gaza City. Time for those who are left there to reclaim what they can and bury their dead. Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel is winning, but as these streets attest, it is a devastating battle, and there is still a long way to go.
Yes.